All right, we're going to practice doing chemical formulas, naming, and figuring out formula or molar mass. To start, what I did was I took a periodic table and I split the screen because it's really important that you have your periodic table available to you when you do these kinds of problems. You're going to need it. And if you noticed, I also added in my oxidation numbers that went along with the different groups, which you already have written on your periodic table, because that's what we're going to need to figure out the formulas. All right, so we're going to start problems by giving you two different elements or ions, and in this case we have aluminum and oxygen. So in order to figure out the formula, the very first thing you need to do is you need to remember what the chemical symbols are for each. And the chemical symbol for aluminum is Al, and for oxygen it's O. Then what we need to do is you need to go to your periodic table and find aluminum. It's right here. And look to see what the oxidation number is. And in this case, it's 3+. And I'm going to write it in the upper right-hand corner of my symbol. Then I'm going to look for oxygen, which is here. And notice that my oxidation number is 2-. Okay, then the next step you take is you're going to crisscross these numbers. Well, I'm going to back up a little bit. The first thing you should do is always make sure that your positive ion is first, and in this case, aluminum is positive and oxygen is negative, so they are in order that they should be. And then I'm going to crisscross the numbers, and when I do that, I also drop the number off. So I'm taking my 3 and I'm crisscrossing it and putting it next to my O in the lower right-hand corner. Only the number. I'm not going to do the symbol. I'll do the same for oxygen to aluminum. So now I'm going to rewrite my number using these new numbers that I dropped off. So I have aluminum to O3. So that would be my chemical formula. And now we're going to name it. And there are some rules in naming that you should have written down in your notes. But in this case, if I look, first of all, names, you only get 2 names. First name is super easy. It's just the name of the element. In this case, aluminum. The second name sometimes is different, however. And in this case, oxygen is a single element. And when you have a single element, the ending of that word changes to IDE. Oxide. So the name of this formula would be aluminum oxide. Okay, that just leaves the molar mass or the formula mass that we need to figure out. And the way I like to do that is I like to separate the different parts of my formula. So I have aluminum and I have oxygen. And then I write down how many of each that I have in my formula. And aluminum, I have 2 of them. Notice right there. And in oxygen, I have 3. All right, so I'm looking for mass. All right, so where am I going to find the mass of aluminum and oxygen? You're going to find that in your periodic table. Normally at the bottom part of every square, your atomic mass. And if I look at aluminum, I notice that the mass is 26.98. I'm going to round that up to 1 decimal point. So if I was going to do that, it would be 27.0. And then oxygen has an atomic mass of 16.0. Now, it's not enough just to add these 2 numbers up. I have to take into account how many of each of the different ions that I have. So I'm going to multiply them. That's why I wrote it down. So if you want to get your calculator out, you can use your calculator. 27 times 2 is 54.0. So that would be the total mass of the aluminum in this formula. And for oxygen, 16 times 3 is 48. That's the total mass of the oxygen in this formula. And then you add them up to get the total mass for the formula. So in this case, it's 102, and my unit would be atomic mass units, AMU. All right, let's do one more practice problem. It's a little different. And here I have calcium and nitrate. Those are the two ions that I've given you. So first thing we need to do is to find the symbol for each, and calcium is simply Ca. And nitrate isn't on my periodic table. Don't get it mixed up with nitrogen. It's simply nitrate. So if it's not on the periodic table, then what you need to do is you need to go to your polyatomic ion sheet, which each of you have, and you look up nitrate. And then you're going to notice that the formula or the symbol for that is NO3. The next step we have to do is figure out our oxidation numbers, which I need to write in real quick. If I were to look up calcium on my periodic table, it's right here. And I look, my oxidation number is 2+. And my oxidation number for nitrate, notice that we have them listed on your polyatomic ion sheet, is 1-. You can either write that as just plain minus or 1-. All right, I note that my positive ion is first, my negative ion is second. Then I'm going to crisscross and drop my number off without the sign, and then rewrite it. So I would write calcium, Ca, but I notice that the number that I had dropped off was 1. You don't write the 1 in when you're writing out the formula, so it's simply Ca. Now if I look at nitrate, I have NO3 and then a 2. What that 2 is telling me is that I have 2 nitrates. So you need to put that nitrate in parentheses and the 2 on the outside. That indicates that I have 2 of this whole thing. So my formula is CaNO3 parentheses 2. Okay, to name it, again, we get 2 names, and this is something that a lot of students get mixed up. First name doesn't seem to pose a problem. The first name is calcium. But then you'll notice I have an N and I have an O, and I know N is nitrogen and O is oxygen, but it only gets one more name. So you use this entire unit and you simply call it nitrate. You don't have to change anything about the name from the ion. It stays exactly the same. So that naming of polyatomic ions are much easier. It's just calcium nitrate. There's no changing of the ending or anything. Okay, finally, the formula mass. This one's a little trickier. We are going to separate out all the different types of elements that I have. I have calcium, and I have to separate this out. So I have nitrogen, and I have oxygen. So those are the 3 types of atoms that I have. So let's count how many of each we have. I only have 1 calcium, so I'm going to write that down. And how many nitrogens do I have? Now, remember, I had to put the 2 on the outside of the parentheses. And in math, when you do that, you have to distribute this 2 to both parts inside the parentheses. So that simply means I have 2 nitrogens. For oxygen, oxygens, I already have 3 oxygens. And now I've got this 2 on the outside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply those two numbers and get 6 oxygens. So I have a total of 1 calcium, 2 nitrogens, and 6 oxygens in calcium nitrate. So now we're going to look up the atomic mass for each of those on your periodic table. This periodic table is much too small to see it, so you're going to have to use your periodic table. And I notice for calcium, it's 40.08, and I'm going to go to 1 decimal point, so I'm going to call that 40.1. Okay, for nitrogen, I have 14.01, so I'm going to call that 14.0. And for oxygen, we have 16.0. Those are the atomic mass for each of those. And now we have to take into account how many of each I have. So we're going to multiply them. So if you want to get your calculator out, hopefully you don't need it for the first one. So I have 40.1. That's the total mass of the calcium and calcium nitrate. I have 28.0 for nitrogen. And then I have 16 times 6, which would be 96.0 for the oxygen. So to get the total formula or molar mass for calcium nitrate, I have to add all these up. So I have 164.1 atomic mass units. So I tried to give you an example of an easier one and a more difficult one, and use this tutorial to help you guide you through them if you tend to get them mixed up as you go along.